Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. I've relocated Hurricane Ian, messing up the schedule, but the show goes on. College football does not stop. And we're talking some Alabama, Arkansas. Before we get into it, again, just wanted to say thank you guys for all the support. If you guys are new here, consider subscribing to the channel. Almost at 2,000 subscribers. That is crazy to think about. We love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So if you do like the content, consider subscribing. Dill, from the new location, let's start talking some Alabama, Arkansas. I'm going to kick it off to you. What are your thoughts on this game?
I'm not gonna lie. I don't think KJ Jefferson's playing good enough football right now to put this Arkansas team in contention with the likes of the Alabamas, the Georgias, and those real top dogs of college football. And I don't know. I got though. You watch that Texas A&M game. It's like he had moments where he looked really good, but there were too many drives where he just wasn't giving them a chance. Was missing easy throws. I don't know. If you asked me at the beginning of the year, I would have thought I think they can score with most teams, but I don't know. KJ Jefferson, there's just something. There's a lack of consistency. Something
that's what it is with him, and he's a guy that when his highs are so high, like him running the football, trying to tackle a guy that's bigger than most of your linebackers, faster than most of your linebackers, it's hard to do. He has a talented arm. He just needs to dial it in. Honestly, very similar to kind of Anthony Richardson, where you see some games where like this dude is a legit Heisman, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, and then you're right. After that fumble that got returned for a touchdown, it seemed like it just kind of rattled them a little bit. When you're talking about beating a team like Alabama, you're gonna have plays that don't go your way, and you have to be able to rebound. And through that whole third quarter and most of the fourth quarter, quite frankly, they just couldn't move the ball. And a lot of that
honestly, we spent the second, third, and first half of the fourth quarter doing nothing. They did nothing. In that, I don't know what changed was he just wasn't making the easy throws that he'll make when he's going. But God, and you're right, because this Bama team, you just can't make those mistakes and beat them. Like how they played it last year. They obviously. He was great and he was consistent and steady, but the games I've seen the Texas A&M game, he just didn't play well enough for them to beat that type of team.
In order for Arkansas to win this game, they're going to have to play near perfect football, and that's how it is. If you want to beat a team like Alabama, if you want to beat a team like Georgia in the SEC, you have to play good football. One thing that I'm just continue to be concerned with is the secondary for Arkansas. I mean, Hudson Clark is a 2019 kid. He's a walk-on. And, I mean, him trying to cover a guy like Corey Burks or Jermaine Burton down the field. I mean, Texas A&M wide receivers were getting behind him, and they were hitting explosive plays down the field. Texas A&M can do that against you. Alabama sure as hell is going to do it to you. I like this Arkansas defense, and I do actually think there's some ways that they can get Alabama a little rattled. This Alabama offensive line, Alabama 8 weeks from now, when they're playing for an SEC title, which they probably still will be playing for, they will be a better team than they are early. They're still coming together. I just think Nick Saban, I think, is on a little bit of a warpath after being embarrassed against Texas. Texas team that just lost to Texas Tech. They played an ugly, ugly game and ended up being able to win because Bryce Young just has that clutch gene in him. Arkansas, I do think, can pressure the quarterback here against Bryce Young. Now, the problem is, Bryce Young is very. You can put a bad offensive line in front of Bryce Young, and he's going to be able to extend plays and get the ball to his receivers. And having guys like Hudson Clark try to tackle Jermaine Burton, Jahmyr Gibbs in space, I see that as a serious problem for the Razorbacks.
And that's the problem is if Max Johnson and that Texas A&M offense was a little more capable of hitting those big plays, they would have hit a bunch of them. And Moose Muhammad was very open on a few plays, and they just missed it. They didn't hit it. I don't think Alabama is nearly as forgiving on the offensive side of the ball. So, and that goes back to when we say Arkansas needs to play near perfect on offense, they need to play near perfect because I just don't see how this secondary is going to do a particularly good job slowing the Alabama passing attack. And I know they look bad against Texas. We all know that, but I just feel like Bryce Young's going to figure it out, and he's going to probably light the secondary up. And as much as they can get pressure, I don't think they're a dominant D-line by any stretch of the imagination to where they can afford to play as bad in the secondary as they do.
Yeah, it's not a defensive line. It's really hard when you have a secondary that is as weak as Arkansas. And it's not necessarily weak from a standpoint of personnel. It's just they've been injured, like losing an All-American like Jaden Catalan really hurts. If you look at these teams, and I mean, I get Alabama hasn't played great teams, ULM, Vanderbilt, not very talented teams. Arkansas looked awesome the first 2 weeks. I mean, they took it to South Carolina, which was a very good matchup. South Carolina struggles against really heavy run offenses, and Arkansas was able to just run the ball down South Carolina's throat. They beat Cincinnati, where Cincinnati, we go and look back at that game. Cincinnati had a few plays where they could have really turned that game around. And they almost lose to Missouri State. And then they lose to a Texas A&M team that lost to App State, barely beat a Miami team at home, and then Miami just lost to Middle Tennessee State. So it's like, how good is this Arkansas team if you're coming off a loss to Texas A&M that I don't really think is a top 25 team right now, and your only big win is against Cincinnati, and they're not even a top 25 team. So, yeah, Arkansas is a top 20 team right now in the AP poll, but I'm a little concerned with, like, where their quality wins when you look at the teams they've beaten and how bad they've beaten those teams.
Yeah, and again, it's not even like I do think Arkansas is. I mean, it's hard to make an argument against them being around that 10 to 20 range because they are obviously a good team. I just think the level they need to get to, they need KJ Jefferson to give them 4 quarters of KJ Jefferson at his peak, and I don't know. It just feels like he hasn't been doing that in the big moments. So, and that's the concerning part because if he can't hit easy throws and for stretches of the game, I just don't see how they're gonna stop them.
They need a good start too. They need these fans to be in it. Like if Alabama jumps them to a 14-0, like one of the biggest advantages Arkansas has in this game, and you saw it against a team like Cincinnati. That place gets loud. That place gets hard to operate your offense, and they're going to need an electric environment, and that only can happen when you are hanging in there through the second half. So I think a start is really important, having a good start, not getting jumped off the rip. Let's take a look at the spread here, 17.5. It opened at 14, so people are kind of on the Crimson side. That's the side I would be on. Alabama hasn't played good enough football for me to want to feel great about taking a 17.5-point spread. But when you think about the trends here, I think Nick Saban's on a warpath right now. I really do think that this Alabama team came into the season with these lofty expectations of being one of the best college football teams in the country, but like one of the best college football teams we've seen in the last decade. They haven't played up to par. Nick Saban knows that. And I don't think if Alabama has a chance to beat Arkansas bad, they will pour it on. And I could see that happening on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the spread. I don't love it. I don't love Alabama to cover it. I mean, it's not the games I kind of look for anyway, but I do still think, I mean, there's part of me that thinks like, okay, when KJ Jefferson in this Arkansas team is on, they look really pretty tough. I could see this game being like kind of what it was last year, like a high 30s to some Bama in the 40s kind of game because that's just, but also like I at the same time, Arkansas is not hitting the explosive plays that they used to hit, and that's another big issue I think they're having. They don't have the Treylon Burks. I mean, they have some talent at wideout, but they're just not hitting. They're not getting.
No, it's no Treylon Burks, and I think another thing is how Arkansas moved the football is pounding it down your throat with a KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. Raheem Sanders has been one of the best running backs in the SEC. I really do think he's an absolute stud, but you look at the matchup. Alabama's very stingy against the run. Their front seven is one of the best in the whole entire country. They've only given up 62 yards per game rushing. If Arkansas can't consistently run the ball for 4 or 5 yards a pop, gets behind the chains, it's not a good recipe to have KJ Jefferson playing in many 3rd and 7 situations. We saw them kind of get into that against Texas A&M in the second half, and that's when that offense started to struggle. They've never really had to do that against Cincinnati, against South Carolina. They were able to stay on schedule. This Alabama team is very, very good up front. I don't see them running the ball very effectively. And you look on the other side of it, I think Bryce Young is gaining some more chemistry with these new wide receivers, and I think he's going to piece up the secondary. So if I had a pick, it would be Alabama 17.5, but I don't necessarily love it because I do see a world where Arkansas can keep this one close, especially if they keep it close in the first half and that stadium is electric in the second half. That's probably my pick. We'll wrap it up there. Again, appreciate you guys. Sorry about the mic audio quality. doing our best here. Football does not stop, even with the hurricane, though. So we appreciate you guys checking us out again. If you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you guys later.